na ra na 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 ra na ra na 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 That was Raga Shanmukhapriya. Raga is like a structure where you have like 7 notes, and 5 of them could take like 2 forms, like a flat or a another variation, or even maybe more than one for a few of those notes. But raga is like a structure which on which it, like the whole song would be composed on that particular structure. So that was Raga Shanmukhapriya. Now, if we move to another raga, like for example, Charukeshi. कृपया पालय सूरे कृपया पालय सूरे करुणारस पागलु शास्त्री कृपया ತದರಿನ ಆಡಮೋಡಿಗಲದೆ ರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಮಾಡಲಾಡಮೋಡಿಗಲದೆ ರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಮಾಡಲಾಡಮೋಡಿಗಲದೆ ರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಮಾಡಲಾಡಮೋಡಿಗಲದೆ. Or if you move to a different sort of ragas which are called Jadya ragas. So the ones that has got all the 7 notes are the major ragas or Sampurna ragas or Melagartha ragas or whatever name you want to call it. But then there are the Janya ragas which are like daughter ragas or son ragas, which are not with all the 7 notes, but you have 5 in the ascension and maybe 5 in the descension, but also 5, maybe all 7 in descension. You have ragas like that where the structure is rather more complicated than the first step, but still sort of very strange sort of ragas. For example, you have a pentatonic raga like Hindolam in Carnatic scale, or you call Malkons in Hindustani. But there you normally avoid the Pancham. So because this is a raga which has not got the Pancham note, so you go to like a Madhyam sort of Shruti. In that way, you can have text in between and sort of improvise the raga in whatever way you want. So, I want to talk more about music in a very classical sense, but in a way that I feel you can understand, and sort of connect it with poetry, obviously, where you have all the lyrics. But this would be a rather long journey, because this is a very sensitive sort of part where you can touch upon this sort of more explorative way of looking at music. But the same way, I want to take you through poetry, art, and maybe even science at a later point, where you can sort of blend all these things together. So that is the real meaning of Artesci, where you have like art which can have all these a lot of branches. Consider it as a tree. So you have all these branches of like music, art, and poetry, and try to blend it with yet another tree or some sort of life form which is maybe even living upon the tree, but that is which is science. So where you have patterning, where you have lots of very interesting fluorescent images which would be used in like lots of sensing apparatus, in maybe lots of applications in the future, where you sort of use nanophotonics in a very intelligent way in building up a nice analytic tool, and how it is connected with all these things like music or art or poetry. So that is the sort of journey that I wanted to take you through. So in terms of art, the ones that I want to discuss in this first episode is just Claude Monet, because Claude Monet is an artist which sort of, from the first time you see anything from him, you will immediately realize who this artist is. There are a lot of impressionists, like there are similar works of Edouard Manet or Pissarro or Renoir, or even those sort of forgotten ones, Sura or anyone. But Monet had carved a niche out of it for himself, and I can talk to you about Van Gogh and Picasso and all later. But right now, this is about Monet. And from the first time when he came up with this very brilliant painting called L'Impressionisme Soleil, which is like Impressionism sunrise. So he actually wanted to give an impression of sunrise. And for that, the interesting thing about this painting is you have the orange sun, and if you take a black and white photograph, because at that time technology was at that sort of standpoint where you could take a black and white photograph, and the photograph would completely avoid the sun over there. You won't even see the sun over there. So that was a technological invention. How did he do that? It was very interesting. He took orange color, equally divided it using a measurable balance, and he with one of those portions he drew the sun. The other portion he drew whatever was there in the sky, and the reflection that was there in the river. So how it does when you go from color photography to black and white is that you sort of, when you match the same colors together, then it sort of negates. So it goes away, sun goes away. So this was a brilliant scientific invention, I would call, by Claude Monet. So that alone would suffice to include Monet in this large artist sort of history journey that I want to take through. So there are all those. I mean, it always when you think of Claude Monet, everyone think of those nymphias, those water lilies. If anybody had gone to this particular museum in Paris called L'Orangerie, there is a circular room where you have like 4 paintings which are done by Claude Monet of the view that he had in his garden, where there was a pond and there were lots of water lilies. And so if you go to this museum and you enjoy the whole artwork for maybe a couple of minutes, and then you think about it, then you stand even more, 5 minutes, it goes on to half an hour, you don't even know how time has passed. You end up like being there for an hour or an hour and a half, and then you start realizing what Claude Monet tried to bring an impression about the water lilies that can have inside your brain. So you can go to any of his series. There are those hay that are put on the fields. So there are such a lot of like Monet had gone into a lot of different sort of branches of impressionism. But in general, I just wanted to bring out this artist in perspective. And now we move on to a slightly more different sort of aspect, which is poetry. So here, I really admire such a lot of greats and such a lot of amazing poets are what actually gave that impetus inside my mind to somehow sort of try and do something like write something and sort of create some poetry or sort of create these sort of texts that are there which people could read at a later point of time and maybe completely miss the point but still understand something differently. So I would like to read some of my own poems which are published a long time back, like more than 10 years back, if I remember correctly. But some of them in a very plain manner, and I would give the text, and you could just try to understand what I meant when I use these particular words to convey the meaning that I wanted to take you through. So this is from Complaints of a Selfish Soul. This poem is titled Torques Tempting to Science. Him, madness. He thinks a lot about himself, but more about others, about other things, mind and mentality, complex routes selected by a chariot, about long hair, his and others, about desire for fame and for her dream. She is beyond the most beautiful words. If descriptions could restrict her, she is not suited to someone like him. Him. He takes the same routes again and again, flowing in his own steps, smiles several times while looking at her. Her. She sings with melodious voice, repeats the same lines again and again, elaborates with some special words, using her expertise in music, mixing disappointment with it, if not being able to hear her notes, in not having a mirror for her melodies. She sings about that in front of him. Him. He praises her beauty, hiding his desire, explains that taking in her music is like the surface of a river's water, reflecting the sunlight's glitter. He says his admiration for her is deeper than the deepest river, deeper even than an ocean. In between his praises, he thinks of what else to say to raise her interest. But he says nothing more. Her. She dances with her music, with steps like those of a pet peacock. She is so moved by his words, she realizes that even her sadness at not having a mirror for her music is masked by his poetic words. But she shows nothing to him. He is a bit worried of her lack of reaction. Due to his lack of concentration, he draws no squares, only curves and circles, and colors his sketches with her steps. His drawing every detail of it is the raising and lowering of voice. Every different color he chooses is governed by the steps of her dance. But he does not want to portray her in the flesh. Her. She forgets all her despair and disappointments. She never looks at the vast fields of green grass, pools of the present. She gazes endlessly at the distant hills, at the high mountains that engage themselves in constant conversation with white clouds, that talk without pause and drift freely in the blue sky, those clouds that put on a frown and turn dark when the sky is angry. These clouds that make the hills wet by falling as rain. She loves that rain. She sings a lot about the rain of the future, but never contemplates a situation where the nearby fields are flooded by the river due to torrential rains, due to the clouds. The mountains block the clouds, but the clouds never complain, nor does she. They fall down as rain. She falls down for him. He looks at the flooded fields too, but instead of drowning in them, he shows her a rainbow that is born between the mountain and the sky. He talks to her about such a union where mountain and sky form a rainbow by shedding the clouds that carry rain. He reveals some of his wishes to her. She is unaware of what in her resembles clouds, those that have turned from white to dark. But she likes his comparing her with the sky, having vastness, having different colored clothes at different times of the day. She also likes his comparison of himself with the mountains, where evergreen desire grows as tall trees. She sings to that satisfaction, dances to that delight, conveys her agreement, sacrifices her pride for him. Him. He embraces her. Her. She enjoys the comfort of his cuddle, but is doubtful about his comparison. A sky cannot be held by a mountain, but then forgets about that in being inseparable from him. He flies now in that sky with birds, the ones that were sitting on tall trees, those that flew into the sky altogether in the sound of their flapping wings, all that combines to form one sound, one form combining dream and madness, to be born as an exuberant child. Child, science, with all the whirlpools of the father's mind, like curls and pretty hair, its color as black as the dark clouds, which are nothing but the mother's pride, crying in symphony with mother's music, chuckling in verve with mother's dance, waving small hands like father's brushstrokes, closing and opening eyes with father's words. I could have just said or written one line: madness and dreams give birth to science. You can accept this decision of a fool who have read all the previous lines, or of me who have written them instead. But bear in mind, the child is still with him and her.
Garitsa, Sani Garitsa, Mapadani Garitsa, Garitsa, Nida, Garitsa, Nida, Garitsa, Nida, Rita, Nida, Pasani, Pamagamapa, Pamagamapa, Pamagarigamapa, Gamapadani, Garitsa, Nida, Garitsa, Nida, Rita, Nida, Pasani, Pama, Sagama, Gama, Sagama. Gama ga sa sa gama sa gama dani ga sa ni dani ga sa ni dani sa ni da ma da sa gama dani sa